The real reason life is brutally unfair for men.
We now have this digital world that we can live our lives in as a distraction from the real world. And there's now more confusion than ever over what it is to be a man and the role of a man in a, you know, and then we look at the stats around suicidality. And I think in Europe,
guys
the
kill
biggest
themselves
killer
all the
of
time.
men under the age of 45 is themselves currently.
Yeah.
Is the shifting idea of what it is to be a man having an impact on people's sense of self and their purpose?
100%. So there's a crisis that's going on in
It's a
men.
huge identity crisis. Massive.
And people think that this is new, but I don't think it's new. It's always been there. So if you look at like, you know, even 50, 60 years ago, 80% of suicides are still going to be men. So historically, men have been killing themselves for like 100 years and no one's been...
Well, I mean, what's that seppuku? The Japanese swordsman thing? Yeah. I mean, plenty of times, like, absolutely.
paying attention. We're just
course.
noticing now because the problem seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, it is.
So there's a couple of things that are really interesting to understand. So one is that if we look at what technology is doing to our brains, the first thing that it's doing is it is externalizing our attention.
No.
So if you look back, like let's say 1,000 years ago, as human beings, we spent a lot more time with ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like you got that's one thing is people like I've noticed this myself is that this is going to sound really bad, but I'm going to just say it. Every time I get to a stoplight or a stop sign I have to wait, I will sometimes pick up my phone and I will look at my phone while I'm driving. How many of you guys do that? Be honest. I do it all the time. Yeah, I do it constantly. Okay. So I'm basically all right. Carefully, I have not run over anybody that I'm aware of.
So let's say that you and I go out hunting. And then let's say you shoot an arrow at a deer and you miss. And then I shoot an arrow at a deer and I hit.
Yeah.
So in this moment, I'm superior to you.
Sure.
And then we pick up the deer and we're carrying it back. And then we have about 2 or 3 hours to take that emotional insult and we kind of process it. We just give our mind space to process it, which it does automatically. Now, if you look at what happens in people's days,
well,
they don't
is also that like, I mean, then you're helping the guy cook the deer and eat the deer and skinning the deer. And now both of you are eating the deer. So like you take part in the other person's success. And like now I think life, especially social media, is seen way more as a zero-sum game. So like whenever somebody sees somebody else doing well, there's not really the enthusiasm to compliment that person or to be positive towards them, but instead to undermine them and make it invalid what their success is.
Actually have any time to process what happens to them because we are so constantly distracted by external things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're like this, but I was in this point where I was idiotically efficient. So I would wake up in the morning.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like this is one of the things that with like my dad, whenever my dad passed away, like basically for the first 2 weeks, I was just kind of like I was so busy. Bro, dying is complicated. Holy fuck. There's all this paperwork. You've got to fill out these forms. You've got to make all these phone calls. You got to talk to everybody. Holy shit. God damn, bro. Shit's annoying, man. A lot of shit to handle. Exactly. It's complicated. But then one day I just finally got down and I feel like I still haven't fully processed it. And like yesterday was kind of bad for me, I'm going to be honest, because it was like the first holiday that I spent without either of my parents, right? Because it was Halloween. Like my dad would take me out trick-or-treating and everything. And, you know, I don't want to talk a whole lot about that right now. But like just in general, that's the way that I felt. And, you know, it was a weird, not so great day for me yesterday. But I'm 30. I'm a grown-ass man. I'm a 35-year-old man. I can handle this. Like I'll be fine. But anyway, even now, yeah, at 30, absolutely. And so, the truth is, though, is like I remember like one of the days I just kind of went into his house and I just sat in his chair and I just cried. And I was just like, it was like 2 weeks after he had passed away. And I was just like, fuck, man. And even now I think about this shit. I do. I think about this shit all the time because it's so sad. It's normal. It is. But like I was so distracted prior to that I didn't really even have time to process those emotions. That's the point. And I think that's what happens with people all the time. And I think that it's like, you know, you're doing that, you're microdosing on that. And then eventually it builds up to being like an actual problem where you never process. It's what I said before about how like people go on the internet with like unresolved personal trauma and then they want the entire internet to live it out for them. So like, for example, like you had a girlfriend that cheated on you. All girls are whores now. You had a boyfriend that, was abusive. Oh, I'd rather live with a bear, right? Like this is your own personal trauma that now you're putting on the whole world. And I think that like there's a lot of examples of that. So instead of working through it privately, they do this instead.
Morning, and I would listen to a podcast while I'm like doing my exercise or whatever. And then even when I'm cooking, I'm listening to a lecture.
Yeah.
And then like when I'm walking to the train, I have earbuds in and I'm listening to a lecture there. On the train, I'm reading. I wanted my life to be completely efficient.
Maximized, yeah.
I didn't want to waste a single moment.
I literally listen to the news in the shower. It's
right. So we don't want to waste time. And so if you really think about it, where's the attention of your mind? Your mind is pointed outside of you.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is once we do not pay attention to ourselves, we lose sight of our internal signals. Literally in the same way that if you raise a
100%,
child in a dark
100%.
cave,
Absolutely.
the photoreceptors in their eyes won't develop. They will.
That's exactly the reason why I have like in my house, all my lights are always off. Because I think that it will allow me, eventually I'll be able to, I can almost see in the dark now. Like I can almost read, I can read a sheet of paper in almost pitch black with like complete efficiency.
Atrophy. So
But like if I go out and the sun's out, I'm like, I'm having a bad time.
anything that the mind does not get access to will start to atrophy. If I don't practice Spanish, I'm going to forget Spanish.
That's right.
The brain is a very efficient organ.
Yeah.
So as we externalize our attention, we lose sight of our internal signals. We don't know who we are anymore. And now if I don't know who I am,
How do you make decisions?
how do I figure out who I'm supposed to be? I pay attention to the outside. Where are the answers? They're on the outside. So this person is talking about masculinity. This person is talking about what it means to be a man.
Well, I think the big problem too is that like there's a lack of fathers in households, and I think it's also a lack of masculine positive role models in households. So like I was incredibly lucky, and a lot of friends of mine, right? I mean, we're also incredibly lucky where like we had people like like you can even ask Cody, one of my real life friends, I've known him for like 20, 25 years, right? Probably closer to probably about 25 years now. We had like my dad, Cameron's dad, AJ's dad, and like, Toby's dad or his stepdad. Like, all these guys were like solid, legitimate, I think all of them actually were ex-military, and they were solid, strong role models. Because like, in my opinion, it's like you want to look at like who is a positive, who is a great male role model. It's not somebody like Andrew Tate or, like even Jordan Peterson. You look at that and like my role model, like I would say like who would I say like you want to be like is like Aragorn, right? In Lord of the Rings. Like that's the guy. That's the guy. And like a lot of people think that like masculinity and being a man is like the ability or the willingness to exercise power. And I don't think that's true. Yeah, or Goku, right? Or Goku's another one. And think about how completely culturally universal Goku is. You can have guys in China that love Goku, Japan obviously love Goku, Europe that love Goku, South America, holy fuck, like they go crazy for that shit. And everybody in the whole world is like, they see Goku and they say they want that's me, right? And so not Goku? No, I think so.
This person is talking about what it means to be a man. Yeah. And now since I don't have any internal source of information, I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a man from the outside world. And this is when men get truly fucked.
Yep.
Because what it means to be a man, we are getting all kinds of mixed signals. So on the one hand, it means being physically
It's also another big problem too is that, and I don't know if he's going to talk about this or not, is that I think that self-help and information on the internet and people looking for any sort of advice on the internet is incredibly toxic, because the most popular people in a lot of cases tell you that your fault is somebody else's. It's the Jews, it's women, it's the patriarchy, it's rape culture, it's fucking white supremacy. It's never you. And that's the problem, is like, so much of and this is, I've said this before, right? So much of these things are constantly about why you're doing people basically are looking for someone to tell them that you're doing your best whenever you're sitting at home jerking off to animals that aren't real on DeviantArt and playing Marvel Rivals for 12 hours a day. And if you don't tell them that that's the right option and you're doing the best you can, they're going to look for somebody else that will. That's the problem. It's so toxic, massively toxic.
On the other hand, it means being a provider. On one hand, it means having sex with as many women as you can find. On the other hand, it means having sex with just one woman and being a really solid man and being a good father. And then there's also people telling us that being a man means that you're shit, right? That you're toxic, that your testosterone level makes you violent, that you're evil, that you're privileged, that there's a patriarchy, all this kind of stuff. So we're getting all this information from the outside about what it means to be a man. And so there are all kinds of interesting ramifications of this. So men in today's society are not allowed to complain. So if you complain and you're a successful person or a privileged person, everyone is going to think you're arrogant. Everyone is going to think, oh my God.
He's right. Yeah, absolutely. He's right. People that are seen in a privileged position, like I think this is true for streamers. Like I have a lot of streamers that will talk to me. And they'll tell me, they're like, I really wish I could tell people this. And they'll be upset whenever they'll tell their audience something. Damn, there's a rainbow. It's a sign? Wait, it's a sign for what? What do you mean?
Who's this fucking guy? This guy doesn't know what my life is like. How does he have any right to complain?
Yeah.
And even your mind will tell you this. You'll look at these people and you'll be like, yeah, I don't have a right to complain. But now we need to stop for a second and think about what it does
I think also, to a certain extent, it is true. Because a lot of people don't acknowledge how good they have it. Like every single person that has the ability to watch this video has an insurmountable advantage over that is over more than 1 billion people in this world right now. You've already spawn RNG'd yourself above 1 billion people that don't have access to the internet. They don't have access to technology. And people never think about that. Also, like those of y'all that are listening to this is in English. English is one of the most well-spoken languages in the world. Like the truth is that learning English growing up is going to be probably more beneficial for you if you do anything outside of your country than learning French, for example, because France is a much smaller country. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that are monolingual in France, and it's totally fine. But in a general sense, knowing a global cultural language, I think that obviously you have Mandarin and Cantonese, English and Spanish, right, which are some of the biggest languages. Knowing those languages is a tremendous advantage and a massive privilege. And a lot of people never understand privilege outside of the spectrum of race or gender, which is, I think, very, very stupid. And I think that, again, it goes back to having the locus of agency inside of yourself rather than external.
Psychology when you as a human being are not allowed to articulate your suffering. I've worked with people who've grown up in abusive households where children will say to their parents, Mommy, Daddy, I'm hurting.
Yeah.
And the parent smacks them across the face. How dare you? You're so lucky. You don't realize the sacrifices I make for you. It's traumatizing to the child when they say, I am suffering and no one listens.
My dad would do this all the time, bro. He would do this constantly. Every time that I told him I had a problem, he would tell me about his problem that was worse. And honestly, it was a point of contention between him and I. I never really got over it, to be honest with you. I still resent that.
This is what we're doing to the generation of men. People are saying, I am suffering. For 100 years, men have been killing themselves. 80% of suicides are men. The most dangerous thing for a man under 45 is themselves.
That's right.
And these people have been literally killing themselves because no one has been listening to them.
Yep.
So in the same way that you grow up with as a child in a household that's abusive, where no one takes you seriously, no one listens to your suffering, and now we even have successful men who are not allowed to complain.
Well, those are especially the ones that aren't allowed to complain, because they're the ones that have access to the resources and all this, methods of power. And so you especially don't want to hear them complaining.
Impact is the same. Anytime you have a human being who is suffering in some way and they cannot find connection with another human being, they cannot find compassion with another human being, that person is going to feel isolated.
Yeah.
And if you look at the statistics on suicide, it's very interesting. So the number one thing that correlates with male suicide is not depression.
Not having a girlfriend?
This is super scary. There's one study I saw recently that suggests that 50% of men who kill themselves have no history or evidence of mental illness. And this, I believe the statistic in my clinical practice because I know what depression looks like. I know what bipolar disorder looks like. And half the men that I've worked with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most of the suicidal men that I work with, their mind isn't malfunctioning. They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
They're looking at things and objectively
Absolutely.
realizing that there's no way out of this situation.
You're
So they
cooked.
turn to suicide.
Exactly.
So I know it's kind of like a very controversial statement, but
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I felt that way myself many times. Like, many times I felt like, oh man, maybe I should just kill myself. Like, even nowadays, like, I'm gonna take another picture of the rainbow because it got brighter. Yeah, like I feel that way, like, regularly. I do. But it doesn't mean you do it, right? But I mean, you feel that way sometimes for sure.
I think that's what my clinical practice has shown, and there's some research to even back that up. So if we sort of look at what's going on
actually
with
a
men,
double
we're sort of, they have nowhere to turn to. And the number one thing that correlates with it is not mental illness, but is a sense of thwarted belongingness. So this is kind of like multivariate regression analysis. But basically what happens is what causes people to kill themselves is they try to connect with others and they get rejected.
Yeah, so and this is what happens. Is people, that's why they go on the internet, they hate everybody else, etc. Yeah, show us. Show right there. Can you see it? Right there. Maybe it's like right about that through there. Yeah, so there it is. And so it's pretty crazy, right? And wow, yeah, I know. Like it's one of the best ones I've ever seen. It is. It's one of the best ones ever. And anyway, so generally, I think that is 100% fucking true. Like, absolutely. Like, guys, they will try to make a connection. It doesn't work out. I think that a lot of guys, you know, like, when do people probably kill themselves? Probably isn't the day that a lot of people kill themselves, like, the most, like, the suicides is, like, pretty close to, if not on Valentine's Day? Like, I think this is a pretty common thing. Now, I could be wrong about that, though. At least men.
Specifically, a very specific research term called thwarted belongingness.
It's Christmas.
So I try to belong to
Basically,
a group,
about the same thing. Yeah.
and that group, or multiple groups usually, will thwart my attempts to join the tribe, to join the community. And this is what actually correlates a lot
Forever
with
alone.
suicidality.
Yeah.
So what's going on with men right now is that we really don't allow them to suffer, you know, because then you're not manly.
Yeah.
And we're so externalized with our attention that we're not connecting with ourselves. And so we're looking to other people to tell us what it means to be a man. But that may or may
It's
not
also
work.
because there's less fathers. Like there's less there are less present fathers that are actual, like, men that are playing a role inside of their kids' upbringing. And I think that's another huge factor. Is they don't have any father figure growing up that they can look at and be like, okay, this is kind of what I should do, right?
For you, right? That may have been what worked for them. So then we kind of get into this problem where we're disconnected from ourselves, and then, like, the world doesn't accept us, we're not allowed to suffer, and that's what creates the problem.
What is the remedy to this?
So I think the first thing is we must reconnect with ourselves, right? So when you're kind of saying, like, why does everyone think, oh, I need to, like, achieve this, I need to make this money and things like that. Where did you learn that you should do all that? You learned all that from the outside.
The internet.
Instagram.
Instagram, right? So we get fed all of these ideas because if you look at all
Yeah,
these
you have to live your life a certain way. You have to be a certain person. You have to have these ideas. You have to, you know, achieve these things and all of that. It's all bullshit. You don't need to do any of that. You do whatever the fuck you want.
influencers, what are they doing? They're never crying. They're smiling. Some of them will even pay very attractive women to take pictures with them.
Well, some
right?
of them are crying, but they're crying and uploading it for ulterior motives, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of them are genuinely
Manipulation.
suffering too. But then it's also like, I mean, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. So one thing is, like, people say that men we don't allow men to be emotional nowadays, but people say, oh, men are allowed to cry. So this is something that I experienced even in my marriage where
Nah, bro, that's like a Venus flytrap. Men are allowed to cry. People, nah, you don't do it. Don't do it. Remember whenever Kyle Rittenhouse cried in, like, his court date, and then people used that as a meme for, like, years? No, don't do it. You don't want to do it publicly. Like, honestly, like, I try not to cry in front of anybody. Just, yeah, in private.
we allow men to cry, but we don't allow men to be angry. But why is it are men no longer allowed to be angry? Just think about it for a second. So anger is just a completely normal emotion, right? But if I'm in a situation where I'm in an argument with my wife and I feel emotion A and I express emotion A and she feels emotion B and she expresses emotion B, these two things should be equal, right? We as both.
No, he's so right. I hope he's going to say what I'm saying. There are so many cases in society where the feminine norm is considered better and more acceptable than the male norm. And I think there's like a over feminization of society that happens inside of education, that happens inside of, I think, popular culture. And I think that it also happens inside of companies too. And basically, whenever it comes down to which emotion is correct, is it the man's emotion or the woman's emotion? The typically male emotions are seen as wrong, and the typically female emotions are seen as acceptable. It's a huge problem.
Human beings get to express what we feel. Now, in the case of me expressing anger and her expressing sadness, she's crying and I'm yelling. Suddenly, I become a villain.
That's right.
It's so interesting.
Yep.
I saw a viral tweet yesterday. It was someone Googling, my wife is yelling at me, what should I do? And then my husband is yelling at me, what should I do?
Yeah, and the wife, it's like, call the police. It's like, this person's terrible. And then the husband is like, what did you do wrong? Yeah.
Googled, my husband is yelling at me, what should I do? Domestic violence helpline comes up as like a Google pop-up.
Oh!
When you Google, my wife is yelling at me, what should I do? Nothing comes up.
Damn. Yeah.
Because obviously, as you said, in the case of villainization, I know that most domestic violence comes from men. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that we see the emotion, we interpret the emotions entirely differently.
Well, just because a lot of domestic violence and especially like death, right, is going to come from men because men are bigger and stronger, that doesn't mean that it doesn't also happen to men. That's the problem, is that just because something is statistically less common doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Like, let's say it's 80-20. That means it happens 20% of the time. That's an insanely huge number. Men don't report it as much? Yeah, they don't. Well, because of, remember that ratchet fucking hoe, Nina? Where she said, oh, well, are you really being a man if you actually are complaining about being sexually assaulted? That's the type of toxic shit that is actually super bad. And I think we should just get rid of that completely. Should be embarrassed. Yeah, exactly. Needs a dude. I don't know. Like, look, I don't want to get in. Looks like a girl to me, but I have no idea.
Because of that.
Absolutely, right? So we as a society will say like, oh, men need to be in touch with their emotions, but not anger. And then this is what really screws men, because as men, we are socialized and conditioned to only feel anger. This is the only emotion you are allowed to feel as a man growing up. And this is the one emotion that gets demonized when you're older. Yeah. So I'll give you a simple example. So like I used to get bullied a lot, right? So when I get bullied in school, like what am I supposed to do, Stephen?
In school? Well, it depends.
Stab them.
If you can fight back.
Absolutely, right? It's fighting back.
That's right.
Like you didn't say talk to the teacher.
That's what my dad told me to do. No, in 8th grade, like there would be a kid try and put his hand in my pocket, and like I told my dad about it. He's like, just stab him. And I'm like, okay. And I just got a fork and I stabbed it right in him. I broke it off in his skin. Never did that shit again. I was in 8th grade.
You didn't say ask for help. You didn't say cry about it, because if I cry about it, what's going to happen, Stephen?
That's it.
You're going to get bullied more.
Absolutely. So we turn every emotion. So men experience anger as something called an umbrella emotion. We literally suppress and are conditioned to suppress all other emotions except for anger. And then if you talk to men about their experience of life, anger is always the first thing that comes out of their mouth. Yeah. Someone breaks up with you. How do you feel about it? Do you feel ashamed? No, that's not what we say. I feel pissed off. How could she do this to me? And then
I generally actually don't get mad. Like it's rare for me to get angry. It happens, but like I try to avoid it as much as possible, because I've felt like I look back in my life and I say, when was the last time I made a good decision when I was mad? I remember. Never. I've never made a good decision when I was mad.
We vent that anger on the internet, and then this turns into misogyny, right? And then we get demonized for it. And it's not that there isn't, we should be harshly judged if we act
But
on
why
those.
is it that women can go on the internet and talk all this shit on men, see how horrible men are, how bad men are, but if men criticize toxic feminine behavior, we're seen as we hate women and all this bullshit. That's the reason why. That's the problem isn't that you can't do it. The problem is it's double standard.
Kinds of emotions. I'm not saying that that's the case.
Yep.
But what we also
That's
need
it.
to consider is that the men who are saying these kinds of toxic things are saying that for a reason. This is because of their
Yeah.
upbringing. This is because of the world that they lived in, right? So we're conditioned to only experience anger. Even sadness gets turned into anger. Shame gets turned into anger. Fear gets turned into anger,
Yep.
right? So if I'm afraid of something happening, what do I need? I need to man up, get angry, right? Like, let's go, son, let's go.
Yeah.
This is the emotion that we tap into to overcome fear. So we don't feel any of those other emotions, and we're left only feeling anger.
At the very heart of aggression, I heard someone say to me once that at the very heart of aggression is some kind of insecurity. But for men, when they encounter that insecurity, they only know how to sort of manifest it as aggression.
So I wouldn't agree with the first thing, that at the heart of all anger is insecurity, but I would absolutely agree with the second thing, that the only way we know how to respond is with anger. Because
Here's the exact quote, just found it. The source of aggression is insecurity. As we are unconsciously aware that our position in life is never secure, people feel increasingly insecure and helpless, so they will be increasingly aggressive and confrontational at a personal and a social level.
So let's tunnel down into that for a second. Okay, so I think that that is true on some level, but also I would disagree. So the first thing is that we have parts.
I don't think it's insecurity. I think it's scarcity, and scarcity drives insecurity. Scarcity is generally what I think is the root of almost all problems that people have, is some form of scarcity, and understanding what that form is will solve their problem. I mean, obviously there's no 100%, but that's it.
of our brain, even animals feel anger. But I think that
Yeah.
when two dogs are fighting over territory, I don't think
if
that
it's
that's
one
born
dog
of some
and it
kind
can
of
only-
identity of insecurity, right? So if we really look at the evolutionary purpose of anger, this is my opinion, is that anger is the emotion that we feel to protect our territory. It's a protective emotion. So if I slap you across the face, what's the first thing that you're going to feel? It's going to be anger.
Yeah.
So if I insult you, you're going to feel angry. It's fascinating the way
hurt.
that it works. So anger causes our thoughts to be faster. Anger causes our peripheral vision to collapse
Yep.
to 30 degrees. So I only see what's in front
This
of
is
me.
what happened. This is the reason why I can't play competitive games, is because I get mad and then I play like shit. That's exactly right. That's 100% what happens. And I know it about myself. That's the worst thing, is I know that about myself. I know I'm crashing out while I'm crashing out.
And it also makes me less sensitive to pain. So my nociceptors will actually start to be
Yeah.
suppressed when I feel angry, right? So if I get into a fight, I'm going to feel it tomorrow, but while I'm getting hit, I'm not going to
It's
feel it.
adrenaline.
So I don't think it's born of all insecurity. I think anger is simply an evolutionary response.
Yeah.
It's something that we experience to protect ourselves. That's why we feel angry, right? So if I attack baby bear, mama bear is going to come out angry.
Yeah.
So it's really a protective emotion. Now, I agree with the second part of the statement 100%, that when we feel insecure, especially as men, the only way we are taught to deal with our problems is through anger, right? So if I'm feeling insecure, if I'm feeling ashamed of myself, if someone's bullying me, what do? I put them in their place,
Yep.
right? I don't try to make peace. I don't complain to someone because no one's going to take me seriously,
Yep.
right? I have to stand up for myself.
Yeah, exactly. And anybody that cries about it or acts like a victim, people hate them and they make fun of them, meme on them, and all kinds of shit like that. Absolutely. Totally
We've
true.
got the first point there about how we
Completely
remedy this
true.
challenge, which is about self-expression, more
Yeah.
self-expression. That's what I heard.
Not self-expression, introspection.
Introspection, getting to know ourselves.
So it's very simple. So if you look at your idea of what it means to be a man, what percentage of that idea comes outside of you? And what percentage of that idea comes from within you?
About 90% comes from outside of me.
And that's why
I
90%.
never even thought about what it means to be anything, bro. I just went and I did whatever the fuck I want whenever I was a kid. That was the way I looked at it. I never really, this might be weird, but I never really looked for a role model. I never really looked for anybody to base what I would do off of. I just pretty much grew up and I just did whatever the fuck I wanted, and I didn't care about what anybody else thought for any reason. Like, even if like my parents were really disappointed or mad at me, it would not even register to me. It would just be like, okay, well, who cares what you think? This is just me. Like, I'm gonna do what I want. That was me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, look up to yourself. Yeah, so you're spoiled? Really? I mean, I wouldn't say spoiled. It's just that I never considered other people's approval as valid or important. Because in a lot of cases, I never considered a lot of other people valid or important. The only person that mattered was me.
People
That's the
we're
truth.
90% fucked.
I'll just be honest.
Right? So, and if you look, and I'm sure you know this, and you've probably done this too, if you look at where is the goodness in your life, where does it come from, Stephen? It doesn't come from what other people have told you. They may have told you something, but then you looked within yourself and then you found that to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The goodness in you, the
Most humble
motivation,
streamer?
the
Yeah.
really good motivation in you, not chasing things, but the duty that you have, everything that you really strive for, all that good stuff comes from inside you. And the problem is that we live in a world that pulls our attention away from ourselves.
What do you think of Andrew Tatism then?
So
Pulled attention. I think also like people they never really stop to think about how they feel, and they never really stop to think. People constantly are looking for like another type of stimulation rather than trying to use their own mind to have any sort of calmness at all. And like, I think that's really what it is for a lot of people. And that's what it's been for me in a lot of cases too. Also, is that like if I can just lay down and just relax and just do nothing, I can kind of like recenter my brain. And I think that like after I do a stream, for example, it can be tiresome to do a stream. I know people are, oh, streaming is easy. Sure, yeah, it is. But like, imagine talking nonstop for 5 hours with like 2 30-second breaks, and you're constantly reading things. Like, there's a lot of mental energy that goes into that, right? And it's like there's never even like 2 seconds that you can like lose focus. So you have a lot of like, it's not physically taxing in a way, but like there's a mental like tax that has. And so like whenever I stop and you decompress, it can feel very, very good to do that.
as a general rule, I don't comment on people that I don't speak to. So tell me the features of what you're talking about.
Okay, so
Andrew Tate.
the recent wave of internet masculine influencers who have
internet dads, that's really what it is. It's just, internet dads.
Bugattis and lots of women and sports cars, and there's many of them. And they seem to be resonant for some kind of reason. That are kind of saying that the way to be a man is to have loads of money, lots of women, these kind of cars, physical strength, and there's just this huge sort of generation of young, typically men, that are now disciples of that religion.
Yeah. So I think if you dislike that toxic masculinity, what we need to understand is it's the people who hate that toxic masculinity that are driving these people towards it. So I know this is kind of crazy. So what's happened is this has grown, right? And as it's grown, what have we done? We've demonized these people. We've said these people are bad. And as we demonize them, what's happened? They've grown stronger. So this is something that's very important to understand. If you are a man and you say, I am suffering today, what is the response that you're going to get?
Shut up.
Shut the fuck up, pussy ass bitch. That's the way it is. It's going to get worse.
Absolutely.
Not in those exact words, but that's whatever the words are, that's what they mean.
Now, I want us to be very, very careful, right? So if you are listening to Stephen say people tell you to shut up, and your first thought as a listener is, no, that's not true, that's the problem. So if people agree with you, they understand what you're saying. But if they disagree with you, that's the problem. We literally have a man who is telling us right now that your experiences when I say I'm suffering, people tell you to shut up. And then
they invalidate the way that you feel. This is a huge problem on the internet where people aren't allowed to feel certain ways. And any sort of emotion that a person's going to have in one direction is categorized as problematic or bad in one way or another.
Are going to be judging you for saying that. And they're going to be saying, no, that's not true.
They're going to be saying, shut up.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So this is exactly the problem. So men are struggling right now, and the rest of the world says, no, you're not. You're privileged. You're a man. There's a patriarchy. And I'm not commenting on the sociology of it. There is a
Yeah.
patriarchy, whatever. Men have many advantages in life. I've experienced many advantages of being a man. Of
course.
It's absolutely true. Let's not go there. I'm talking about the individual experience of men. So there is one group of people on the planet who says, yes, your life does suck. And that's these toxic masculine people. They're the only people
Yeah, they're the ones that are listening. They will enable you. Absolutely.
that truly validate men's experiences. Because everyone else says, why are you complaining? And these guys say, yeah, you're a fucking loser. What are you going to do about it? They at least meet you where you're at. And they say, yes, your life is hard, and I will show you a way to make it better. Whereas the rest of the world says, no, your life isn't hard. What are you complaining about?
Yeah, the original sin of being born a man and feeling emotions is never going to work. It's never going to win over men. And it is a narrative that's been created by Karens that hate men. That's basically it. It's Karens that hate men. They hate masculinity. They have some problem with their fucking ma or their dad or their brother or their boyfriend or something like that. And they've demonized all of this, like, just all the way through. And I think that that's also another, there is a huge amount of animosity that I think young men have towards that.
And I've seen this as a doctor. I've seen patients who are complaining
Men have an
about
advantage, but you can't explain that to someone who's poor and struggling. Well, men have advantages that women don't have, and women have advantages that men don't have, right? So it's kind of like in classic WoW. So women are like hunters and men are like warriors, where women have like a very good leveling build. And I think that they level up, like, you know, you're level 30, you're level 24 as a hunter. You can solo all kinds of things. You can do all kinds of stuff and you're very efficient. Whereas like if you're a warrior, you've got to fight one mob at a time and then sit down and eat and drink. But by the time you get to level 60, then, you know, your top damage and the hunters can't even do shit. The only thing they're there for is to give you aspect of the pack so you can run to the next mob to kill it. That's it. And so, like, that's the difference between, like, I think the experience that, like, young men have. Because, like, whenever you're a young guy, right? How many of you guys had this experience? You're a young guy. You're 20 years old. You're about 20 years old. And you have a resentment for women because you feel like women have it a lot easier, right? Well, women have it so much easier than men. It's not fair that she gets these opportunities and I don't. She's making all this money and I'm not. She has this guy that, you know, is paying for her stuff and I don't have this. But then you get older. And now you're, let's say, 31. And that same girl is saddled with a kid from this guy that left her. And she's living by herself. And it sucks for her. And her life is awful at this point. And it's just going to get worse. And so that's really kind of what happens. Is that I think that a lot of young men haven't seen that life progression happen. Where a lot of the privileges that young women have are privileges for young women. And the majority of your life, you will not be young, if you're lucky. And so because of that, those privileges erode, and that's never a lot of the advantages. You know, that's the late game scaling, right? That's the, you know, level 55 warrior that's out damaging level 60 hunter. There it is. Yeah, men scale way better than women do. They do. It's just the way it is.
about pain. Women who are complaining about pain because they have an internal bleed within the wall of their uterus that cannot get detected. And they're saying, I'm hurting, I'm hurting, I'm hurting. And we ignore this person's pain. And that's when things go bad. So for years and years and years, we have ignored the struggles of men. And there's one group on the planet who accepts them with open arms. And the more that we demonize them, so when someone starts believing in this toxic masculinity, what is the response?
This is also this is like a precursor of why I think a lot of men are becoming right-wing. This is why I think you're having such a massive distinction between like young men and young women becoming more right-wing. And the reason why is very simply because at least Nick Fuentes agrees with you that things are against you, right? He listens. He doesn't just call you a loser, right? Like that's basically it. And that's why a lot of young guys are turning towards those types of role models, those types of characters. Yeah, right wing makes more sense now. Yeah, exactly.
Do people ever ask, like, help me understand what your life is like? Like, what do you like about this person? Because everyone's going to them for a reason, but we never bother to ask. Why are you listening to this person? What does this mean to you? We see these posts all the time in our community. My boyfriend is getting into this stuff.
Yeah.
My son is getting this stuff. How do I stop it? Hold on a second. Don't try to stop it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the problem, that you never even considered why he's getting into it. You never even considered his feelings. Maybe that's the reason why he's getting into it in the first place.
Understand it first. Because everyone's trying to stop it, and no one is bothering to listen to what the experience of these men are.
Karens.
And that's why it's getting worse
That's right.
and worse and worse as we try to stop it.
So if I'm the mother of a son who is watching a lot of these sort of toxic male influences online, what would be a better approach versus just banning the computer and telling them that that's toxic and not to look at it?
Help me understand what you like about this.
Yeah.
What is it like
Exactly.
to be a man in today's day and age? How do you feel about yourself? How does it feel knowing that?
And the reason why parents don't want to do this is because this takes time, thoughtfulness, and intelligence. It's a lot easier than just say, oh, you're not using that computer anymore. You're going to look up all more of that crazy Hitler stuff. That's it.
That 70 to 80% of women want you to make more money than them, and yet 60% of people who graduate from college are women. So men are living in a world today where there are impossible expectations to meet. And so, like, what is it like to be someone who fundamentally has no chance at success? Right? These are the kinds of
This is the reason why a lot of guys feel this way, is they feel like they don't really have the opportunities. And also, I think that there's like definitely, I think dating apps really create this mentality where it is like the top 10% of guys are seen as the ones that are able to hook up with all of these girls and having access to, you know, having a pretty girlfriend or something like that. And I think that's also very, very tremendously negatively affected, like, I guess, like the way that men see the world. That's been really, really problematic.
things that you need to
More like
say.
0.1%. I mean, like maybe I don't know. Like I've never had a dating app before in my life. To be honest with you, I haven't. So I don't know what it's like. But from everything that I hear, it's horrible. And also, like, the women's experience is also really bad too. But it's just a different set of problems. Instead of getting no matches, you get 40 matches of 40-year-old men whenever you're 19.
Say to these people, you
And
need
they're
to
fat.
give them an alternate place to go where they can be heard and helped, supported and understood. See, anytime we make a judgment, our mind already has a conclusion.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to learn anytime we're judgmental. So what do we do to all these people who are toxic men? We even create the word toxic. We literally label them as bad in some way. And I'm not saying that
Well, it's a very simple idea. There's a word for toxic male behavior, but there's not a word for toxic female behavior. It's pretty simple. I mean, it really, think about it.
behavior isn't toxic. But what I'm trying to point out is that
Aaron,
even
not
in our
really.
language, there is so much harsh judgment.
Yeah.
So I once had a patient.
We both just did it, didn't we?
Absolutely. So I once had a patient who was smearing
Karen,
feces
And I'm trying to do it.
all over the school. So adolescent kid, right? And when you have a
Based.
kid who's
Fucking
literally taking a
based.
shit and
There it
wiping
is.
it on the walls and stuff, what
Yeah.
happens? The kid gets punished. Kid gets punished again and again and again. The one really sad thing is no one ever asks, why are you doing this?
Yep.
What's going on inside you? Because healthy kids don't do this.
I would say that's generally true.
It's only kids who've been traumatized in some way.
Yeah.
And as I've worked with incels, as I've worked with people who are toxically masculine, it always starts with trauma. And when I say always, it is a clinical experience, but I'm talking about 100%. So 100% of people start on this path by getting hurt in some way, by getting taken advantage of in some way, by
Yep.
sacrifice.
Villain origin story. There it is. Remember that kid the other day that got mad about me making a joke about his fan art? 5 years, bro. That dude was sitting on it for 5 years. He let that cook, and then finally he just let that shit out. Yep.
Something and not getting something in return. And they have their share of responsibility too. I'm not saying that they're hapless victims, but I think that people who are raised
Yeah.
with love and compassion and do have connections don't go down this road.
It's much less common.
You're so passionate about this, aren't you? Because I feel like your eyes have seen in your practice
Well, because
So,
you see a bunch of fucking people kill themselves and you actually try to help them and then it doesn't work. I mean, that's the reason why. I mean, you've got to be passionate about it. I mean, and it is really sad. It's tremendously sad. And I think it's going to get worse too.
pretty heartbreaking things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, see, unless we are willing to be what these people need, they're going to continue going down the toxic masculinity. Of
course.
Someone needs to start offering.
Yeah,
these
and
people-
this is true too. Is that like you can't just tell people, no, you're not allowed to think this, and then they all are like, oh shit, oh my god, let me just do exactly what you tell me now.
full safe haven.
Yeah, obviously.
No matter what they say, or not no matter. I think there should be consequences for actions. But so this is as someone who's worked in a jail, right? So, and this is what's kind of interesting if you really think about it. People will judge me for talking to, or even trying to support people who are toxically masculine.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh my God, you're such an asshole! You're giving these people a platform. How could you make the world a worse place?" And then
Yep, there it is. Fucking Karens.
I tell them I worked in a jail for 3 months, and they're like, "Oh, look at you! You're so compassionate. You're working with these people who are like criminals." And like, "Oh my God, I don't think they realize."
I wonder who's more toxically masculine. The murderer with face tattoos that, you know, is in jail for 20 years, or this content creator that, you know, says that women are whores, right? I mean, geez, guys, I wonder.
That anyone you see on social media is 10 times better than the people that I worked with in jail.
Yeah.
These are people who are actual pedophiles, actual rapists.
Yeah.
Right? Not just talking about it. Maybe the people on social media are too. I don't know. And so it's really interesting the way that our mind automatically judges things. Mm-hmm. And so if we really want to fix this problem, and I think we need to fix this problem, it's just my take. I mean, I'm not I'm a big fan of like compassion and trying to support other human beings. I'm not saying that that's always the right answer.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you may need things like war or violence or whatever.
Sure.
And there may be causes for it. But generally speaking, I think that like demonizing these people isn't working.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the
It's a good video.
15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It
I'll link
helps
you
us
guys the video.
tremendously, and the
Give 'em
bigger
a
the
sub.
channel gets, the bigger the guests.
Yep. There's a video right there. Give me a second. I'll get to that.
We now have
But
this
let me go
digital
back.
world.
Yeah, fucking awesome video. Yeah, it was a great video. Like, I really, really thought that was good. And I figured, like, I would watch that because I thought it would just, you know, it would be a good video. Like, that's just it. And I've always loved Dr. K, you know, like, for years, and, you know, always supported them. And I think that the interviewer, you know, this guy, he did a great job of just asking good questions and then just shutting the fuck up, right? Like, this is a great interview, and I want to talk about, like, my kind of own opinions about this, too, because I think that it's a pretty popular topic, right? It definitely is. Yeah, it's more human. Yeah, absolutely, right? Spot on. Yeah, definitely. And there's the video right there. Did you watch the shoe video today? No, it might be tomorrow. I'm not really sure entirely yet, but I'll probably figure out more of it. We need more of this. Yeah, I thought it was a good video, right? You always get orange in the morning, in the evening. Yeah, that's because usually whenever the sun goes down, the sun's going down. It was raining earlier, and I think it's probably cold, etc. And so that's it. And how far do you think men having their own men's right movement as the women's rights movement back whenever it started? I think that men don't really need rights. They need equal treatment. So, like, for example, men need equal treatment in regards to child custody. Men need equal treatment in terms of prison sentencing, things like that. So it's not really necessarily rights, but it's mainly the way that the existing rights are being applied. I think that's mainly the issue, right? In divorce, I mean, maybe, right? Equal rights and treatment. Yeah, definitely. But in Twitch bans, yes, definitely.